They say your worst nightmare is standing naked in front of a crowd. But let me tell you something worse. Standing fully dressed, perfectly prepared, watching 12 executives walk out of your presentation one by one while you're still talking. My name is Rachel Bennett, and 6 months ago, I thought I had finally made it. Senior Innovation Director at Meridian Tech, one of the fastest growing companies in Silicon Valley. I had clawed my way up from an entry-level analyst position, spent 7 years proving myself, sacrificed weekends, missed family gatherings, all for this moment. The quarterly executive review. My presentation on the new AI integration platform that could save the company millions and revolutionize our entire product line. I had prepared for 3 months. Every slide was perfect. Every data point verified. Every projection conservative yet impressive. I practiced in front of mirrors, recorded myself, adjusted my tone, my pacing, everything. That Tuesday morning, I walked into the glass-walled executive boardroom with my head held high. 12 faces stared back at me. The CEO, Marcus Sterling, the CFO, Jennifer Ross, department heads, vice presidents. The people who decided careers with a single nod or frown. I started strong. My voice was steady, confident. I could see some of them nodding during the first few slides. The market analysis was solid. The competitive advantage was clear. Then, 7 minutes in, it started. Marcus Sterling glanced at his phone. Not unusual, right? CEOs are busy. But then he stood up. "Excuse me," he muttered, not even looking at me. He walked out. I paused for just a second, then continued. "You don't stop a presentation because one person leaves, even if it's the CEO. Maybe it's an emergency. Maybe it's important." 3 minutes later, Jennifer Ross followed. Then David Chen, our CTO, then another, and another. My voice started shaking. I could feel my hands trembling as I gripped the remote, but I kept going. I had to keep going. Maybe this was a test. Maybe they were coming back. They didn't come back. By minute 15, only 2 people remained. An intern taking notes and Marcus Sterling's assistant, who looked at me with pity in her eyes. Actual pity. I finished the presentation to an empty room. My voice cracked on the last slide. The assistant gave me a sad smile and quietly left. I stood there in that glass boardroom, surrounded by empty chairs, feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my entire life. Through the transparent walls, I could see other employees glancing in, then quickly looking away. Some whispered. Some pretended not to notice. I gathered my materials with shaking hands and walked back to my office, every step feeling like a public execution. My colleague Sarah caught my eye in the hallway and quickly ducked into a conference room. Avoided. That's what I had become. Avoided. When I reached my desk, there was an email waiting. From Marcus Sterling's assistant. Subject line. Follow-up. "Rachel, Marcus wanted me to inform you that the executive team has decided to move in a different direction. Your project is being shelved indefinitely. Please attend a meeting with HR tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss your future with the company." My future with the company. Corporate speak for, "You're done." I sat there, staring at my computer screen, and something inside me broke. Not just my pride, not just my confidence, something deeper, because I knew something they didn't know yet. Something I had discovered 3 weeks earlier while preparing this very presentation. And as I sat there, in that empty office, humiliated and discarded, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found one name, one person, Michael Zhang, and I pressed call. Let me take you back 3 weeks before that nightmare presentation. Back to when I still believed in this company. When I still thought hard work and loyalty meant something. I was deep into research for the executive review, analyzing our financial data, tracking our AI integration costs, comparing them with projected savings. That's when I noticed something strange. A series of payments, large payments, recurring monthly transfers to a company called Silverton Consulting Group. Now, consulting fees aren't unusual for a tech company. We hired external expertise all the time. But these payments were different. They were coded under operational expenses, buried deep in departmental budgets, scattered, hidden, and they were massive. We're talking $200,000 a month for 18 months. That's over $3.5 million. I had never heard of Silverton Consulting. No one in my department had mentioned them. No reports, no deliverables, nothing. So I dug deeper. Silverton Consulting Group was registered in Delaware. Standard corporate veil. But the ownership documents, which took me 2 days to track down through public filings, showed one primary shareholder, Marcus Sterling's brother-in-law, Richard Silverton. My hands went cold when I saw that name. I kept digging. Every single consulting fee payment coincided with major company decisions. Decisions that always seemed to benefit specific vendors. Vendors who just happened to share office buildings with other companies owned by, you guessed it, people connected to Richard Silverton. It was a kickback scheme. A sophisticated one, but still a kickback scheme. Marcus Sterling was funneling company money to his brother-in-law through fake consulting fees, and in return, getting a cut of the vendor contracts he was approving. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at spreadsheets and documents, feeling physically sick. This was my company, the company I had dedicated 7 years of my life to, and it was being robbed from the inside by the person at the very top. I had a choice to make. Report it and become a target. Stay silent and become complicit. Or document everything and wait for the right moment. I chose option 3. I created a encrypted backup of everything. Every payment record, every suspicious vendor contract, every email I could access through legitimate channels that showed Marcus personally approving these consulting fees while slashing budgets in actual productive departments. And I reached out to Michael Zhang. Michael and I had worked together 4 years ago. He was a senior data analyst back then, brilliant with numbers, even better with patterns. He left Meridian after a disagreement with management about, ironically enough, financial transparency. He went on to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, the people who investigate corporate fraud. I didn't tell him everything over that first call. Just enough. Just that I had found something concerning and wanted his advice on how to properly document it. Michael is smart. He knew I wouldn't contact him unless it was serious. Rachel, he told me over coffee 2 days later, if what you're suggesting is true, you need to be extremely careful. People like Sterling don't just lose their jobs when they get exposed. They go to prison, and people facing prison do desperate things. So what do? I asked. You document everything. You create a paper trail that's impossible to dispute. And when the time comes, you make sure it goes to the right people through the right channels. Not company HR, not internal compliance. Those people answer to Sterling. It has to go external. SEC? I asked. He nodded. And possibly the FBI, depending on how deep this goes. I spent the next 2 weeks building the most comprehensive evidence file I had ever created. Transaction records, email chains, corporate filing documents, vendor contracts, bank routing information, everything. And then I made a mistake. A small one, but enough. I printed a few key documents from my office printer, late at night, when I thought no one was watching. But IT systems track everything. Every print job, every file access, every login time. Someone in Sterling's inner circle noticed. They didn't know what I had found, but they knew I was looking. That's why they walked out of my presentation. It wasn't about my project at all. It was about me. About sending a message. About destroying my credibility before I could destroy theirs. They wanted me to quit, to slink away quietly, humiliated and broken, to disappear. But here's what Marcus Sterling didn't know. Here's what none of them knew. I had already sent everything to Michael, 2 days before the presentation. Every document, every file, every piece of evidence. And when I called him from my empty office, after that disastrous presentation, after that humiliating walkout, I didn't say much. I just said 4 words, Michael, it's time. Go. The next morning, I walked into that HR meeting expecting to be fired. I wore my best suit anyway. If I was going down, I was going down with dignity. Patricia Coleman, the head of human resources, sat across from me with that practiced sympathetic expression they teach in corporate management courses. Marcus Sterling's assistant was there too, taking notes. Rachel, Patricia began, we want to thank you for your years of service to Meridian Tech. However, given yesterday's presentation issues and the feedback from executive leadership, we think it's best if we part ways. What presentation issues? I asked calmly. Patricia blinked. I'm sorry. What issues? My presentation was thoroughly researched, properly formatted, and backed by solid data. The only issue was that the entire executive team walked out. That's not a presentation problem. That's a respect problem. Patricia's expression hardened. Rachel, I don't think arguing is going to help your situation. I'm not arguing. I'm asking for clarity. Because if you're firing me for performance issues, I'd like those issues documented. In writing, with specific examples. The assistant stopped typing. Patricia's jaw tightened. We're offering you a generous severance package, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table. 3 months' salary. Continued health benefits for 6 months. All we need is your signature on this non-disclosure agreement and non-disparagement clause. I looked at the papers. Standard corporate silence package. They would pay me to go away quietly and never say a negative word about the company. What exactly would I be agreeing not to disclose? I asked. Standard NDA. Company processes, proprietary information, internal discussions. So if I discovered, hypothetically, that company funds were being misused, this NDA would prevent me from reporting that? The room went very, very quiet. Patricia's face went pale. The assistant's pen literally fell from her hand. That's not. Rachel, what are you suggesting? I smiled. A real smile. The first genuine smile I had felt in days. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just asking about the scope of this agreement. For clarity. Patricia stood up abruptly. I need to make a phone call. This meeting is temporarily suspended. She left the room. The assistant followed. I sat there alone for 7 minutes, watching the clock. When Patricia returned, Marcus Sterling was with her. His face was red. His jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles flexing. Rachel, he said, his voice low and dangerous. What exactly do you think you know? I know that Silverton Consulting Group has received over $3 million in payments from this company over the last 18 months. I know that Silverton is owned by your brother-in-law. I know that every payment coincides with vendor contracts that you personally approved. I know that those vendors are overcharging us by at least 30% compared to market rates. Should I continue? Marcus Sterling turned a shade of red I didn't know human skin could achieve. You have no proof of anything. You're a disgruntled employee making wild accusations because you failed. I didn't fail, Marcus. You sabotaged me. You walked out of my presentation because someone told you I had been accessing financial records. You wanted to discredit me before I could reveal what I found. But here's the thing. I'm not the one you should be worried about. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Because 3 days ago, I turned over every piece of evidence I have to a friend who works at the SEC. Banking records, email chains, corporate filings, everything. And yesterday, after your little performance in that boardroom, I told him to file the official report, which he did, last night, at 8:47 p.m., to be precise. The room went silent. Marcus Sterling's face transformed from red to white in seconds. You're lying, he whispered. Am I? Then why don't you call your attorney and ask if anyone from the SEC has contacted Meridian Tech in the last 12 hours? Go ahead. I'll wait. Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He walked to the corner of the room. I couldn't hear the entire conversation, but I heard enough. Words like investigation and document request and freezing accounts. When he turned back around, he looked like a man who had just seen his entire life collapse. You destroyed me, he said quietly. No, Marcus, you destroyed yourself. I just documented it. There's a difference. He left the room without another word. Patricia stood there, staring at me like I was a ghost. You'll never work in this industry again, she said. Do you understand that? You're finished. I gathered my things and stood up. Maybe. But I'll sleep better than you will. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Beautiful, vindicating chaos. The SEC investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Turns out, when you hand them a complete, organized, documented case of corporate fraud, they take it seriously. Within 48 hours, they had frozen Silverton Consulting's accounts. Within a week, they had executed search warrants at Meridian's headquarters. I watched it unfold from my apartment. News crews, federal agents, employees streaming out of the building with shocked expressions. Michael called me on day 3. Rachel, you need to know. This is bigger than we thought. Sterling wasn't just stealing from Meridian. He was using those vendor relationships to create a whole network of kickback schemes, multiple companies. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. Oh my God, I whispered. The FBI is involved now. Financial Crimes Division. They want to talk to you. Officially. As a witness. I testified twice. Once to the SEC, once to a federal grand jury. I told them everything. Showed them everything. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Chen, told me I had potentially saved the government years of investigation. People like Sterling are usually very good at hiding their tracks, she said. The fact that you documented everything so thoroughly, that you understood what you were looking at, that's rare. Most people wouldn't have caught this. Most people wouldn't have had the courage to report it. Marcus Sterling was arrested 6 weeks after my disastrous presentation. The news showed him being led out of his home in handcuffs. His brother-in-law was arrested the same day. So were 3 other executives at Meridian who had been part of the scheme. Jennifer Ross, the CFO who walked out of my presentation, turned state's evidence, testified against Sterling in exchange for a reduced sentence. Turns out she knew about everything but was too afraid to speak up. Until she wasn't. The board of directors fired every executive involved and brought in an interim CEO to stabilize the company. They also released a public statement acknowledging that a former employee had uncovered the fraud and reported it appropriately. They didn't name me, but within the industry, people knew. Word spread fast. But here's the thing about revenge. Real revenge. The kind that actually matters. It wasn't about watching Marcus Sterling get arrested, though I won't lie. That felt good. It wasn't about the headlines or the vindication or people apologizing to me. It was about the 140 employees at Meridian who didn't lose their jobs because the fraud was stopped before it bankrupted the company. It was about the retirees whose pensions were protected. It was about the new leadership that actually cared about doing things right. 3 months after Marcus Sterling's arrest, I got a call from Meridian's new CEO. Her name was Caroline Webb, and she had a reputation for turning around troubled companies. "Rachel," she said, "I know what happened to you here was unforgivable. I know you have every reason to never want to hear from this company again. But I'm calling to ask if you'd consider coming back, not to your old position, to a new one. Chief Integrity Officer. You'd report directly to me and the board. Your job would be to make sure what happened under Sterling never happens again." I sat with that offer for a week. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let Meridian be someone else's problem. But another part of me, the part that had spent 7 years building a career there, the part that still believed companies could be better, that part won. I accepted, with conditions: full transparency, direct board access, and a written guarantee that whistleblowers would be protected, not persecuted. I've been back at Meridian for 4 months now. My office is 3 doors down from where it used to be. Sometimes I walk past that glass boardroom where they humiliated me, where they tried to break me. But now when I walk in there for meetings, every seat is filled. People listen. People take notes. People respect not just my title, but the fact that I was willing to risk everything for what was right. Marcus Sterling is currently serving an 8-year federal sentence. His brother-in-law got 6 years. Jennifer Ross got 2 years in probation. The company paid $43 million in fines and restitution. And me? I sleep well at night. Because here's what I learned from all of this. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. That's just spite. Real revenge, meaningful revenge, is about justice. It's about making sure that the people who abuse power face consequences. It's about protecting everyone else who comes after you. When those 12 executives walked out of my presentation, they thought they were ending my career. They thought humiliation would silence me. They thought I would just disappear. They were wrong. I didn't disappear. I made one phone call, and that call changed everything. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight back with anger, it's to fight back with truth, with evidence, with courage. The system isn't perfect, but when you work within it the right way, when you document everything and go through proper channels, justice can actually happen. Those executives thought walking out of my presentation was a power move. It was, just not the kind they intended. It was the move that finally pushed me to act, to stop waiting, to make the call that brought everything crashing down. So here's my message to anyone who has ever been humiliated, overlooked, or pushed aside by people who abuse their power. Document everything. Find the right allies. Be patient. And when the moment comes, don't hesitate. Make the call that changes everything. Because sometimes revenge isn't about what you take from someone, it's about what you stop them from taking from everyone else.